Hey everybody, it's Bruce with Board Game Impact, and when I'm not recording the podcast, shooting these videos, working on my PhD or teaching on the university campus, I tend to really enjoy different animes and different things of fun. And so from a very young age, I also enjoyed things like Gundam. I just loved it. And so when I got the opportunity to play Battletech, I wasn't going to turn that down. I am not editing that out because I believe in some raw content. But Battletech, a game of armored combat. And so this video is going to be impressions on that experience and overview of Battletech if you've never played, and as well as why I picked this up and what I think on whether or not it's a great entry to the tabletop miniatures line of games. So let's jump right in. So where to begin besides, how about we do this? Freaking cool mechs. I'm just gonna start it right there. So this game is a game of having your different mechs run around the board, and you're gonna be shooting each other up or punching each other or kicking each other. And say hi to Penny. She's with me for everything I record. And you're going to be essentially fighting until it's like last person standing, which is just cool. So that's exactly what we did. Like this morning, we just played through on my friend's copy. Thank you, Fox. And then I went out and bought my own. So spoiler alert for later down the line. So you're essentially going around and you're going to be doing different combat. So it's not where you have to have a whole army of miniatures like Warhammer 40K or Age of Sigmar. It's not like War Cry or Kill Team, which you have a whole squad. Literally, I just had one unit. And this version comes with 8 of these. And so you can do different kind of allotments. Now, each mech is going to have its own specialties and own different like stats. So like here's another one. This one's called an Atlas. This has like a skull for a head. And then you've got like this tiny one called a Locust that's super, super fast. So it can run around the battlefield real fast. Now, obviously, if you've got a giant thing, which its actual subclass ability is called Juggernaut, versus a Locust, like even look at the size difference, you know this Locust is not going to have as much power as the Juggernaut. And that's because you can do like little matchups. So if you want to just play 2 little mechs running around the board, you can do that. Or you can do what's called lances, in which you're going to be playing essentially a team versus team. So there can be 2 players on each team, or it's multiple people controlling 1 mech each. Now that's a whole, so if you actually want to get into that, that's a whole nother, like, how do we do that? But this video is really just, how does Battletech work for kind of playing that 1v1 or all versus each other. So we're actually going to be playing 1 versus 1 versus 1 versus 1, so 4-player game. And we're each going to play our own one mech and going to be going around and fighting. It's just going to be so freaking cool. I'm looking forward to it. So how does this work? How does Battletech work? And all the footage you've been seeing is actually footage that I took while playing this morning. So it's just really cool. So that was our game this morning. I won. I had a really good teacher. So how does Battletech play out? It's actually really simple, and it's got stuff that we know in board gaming, and that's because this game hasn't really changed a lot in the 20+ years it's been around. It's the same rule set, and it's still coming out, which is incredible. And yes, this is the same game that you're also seeing on Steam and other places as well for the computer. So how it's going to work, you're going to roll 2d6, so 2 6-sided dice each, and you're going to roll for initiative. And with that initiative, whoever gets the higher number has the initiative. Good for them. Now, what that means, though, is in reverse turn order, is you're going to then move around the board. So if I lost the initiative, I'm going to move first, and that's because if I have initiative, I'm going to be able, I want to know what they're going to do. So you get to move first, and then the other person gets to respond. So if I lost the initiative, they got to respond. I lost the initiative a lot. But that's okay. So once you've then moved around the board, and so when you're moving, you've got 3 different ways you can move. You can walk, you can run, or you can jump. You cannot split that up. You have to either walk, run, or jump. Not all units can jump. And what's fascinating is the number you see for the walking and the running and the jumping isn't necessarily the number of hexes, because this is a hex-based game. And so rather what it is this is a hex, right? So like if I was to turn it, that's 1, and then move, that's another 1. If I was to move into a wooded area, let's say, that would cost me 2. So if I wanted to turn and then move into wooded, that'd be 3 that I've spent of my, let's say, 4 movement that I had. Now jumping, that's a number of hexes, and then you land however you want to, because you're like coming down and landing. That's probably sounded great on audio. The other way you can do things is you can run, so it'll be a little faster, you can get a little further around the board, and then there's jumping. Now the reason you might want to do that, you might want a better position. Maybe you're a mech that does really good up close, or you're a mech that, like mine was in the game, I wanted to be a little bit out of the distance so I can like snipe with some of my bigger weapons, because they needed like this big, there's these like plasma energy things, PPCs they were called, and so like, and then they fire out. So it was very evocative in terms of what it brought out for me personally, of what, like thinking of all this happening. Or you might be wanting to be up close and you want to like kick them in the shins or like punch them, because we did that in the game, which is crazy. And when an arm came off, she didn't have another arm left. But if she did have a hand left, she could have grabbed the arm and used that as a weapon against me. There's a thing with Battletech that's just important to know. There's a rule for that. You might think there's no way there's a rule for this, but apparently, yeah, there's a rule for everything. She was telling me about an experience where another player jumped into the water and had an awful roll, and their mech landed face first. And you then have to roll for whether or not it floods, and it flooded, and it just killed the unit on like turn 2. Because they were dumb and they just YOLO'd and jumped off a cliff and wanted to see what happened. Now they knew this was possible. It was an experienced player. Now if obviously it was a new player, let's like, oh, I didn't realize the implications in turn 2. Yeah, make those kind of choices, and we'll get to that in a minute. So you rolled for initiative, you moved whatever you wanted to move, and then it's the shooting phase. All the shooting is going to happen simultaneously, so don't worry about that. But what is really important is there is a little bit of a calculation you'll need to do. It's actually really simple. There's an acronym for it, and it's called GATOR, G-A-T-O-R, and that is your gunnery skill, so how qualified is your pilot. You get all these numbers in the beginning, don't worry about it. The next thing is the attacker's move modifier, so that is your modifier. So let's say I was running. Well, it's going to be really hard to use my gun when I'm running and get a good shot, right? So it's going to have a higher modifier. So running is usually a +2, jumping I believe is a +3, and walking was a +1. Then you've got the target's modifier, movement modifier. So let's say I am running, and we already talked about that. That might be harder for me to shoot them, right? Well, if they're running too, guess what? It's going to be harder to hit them too. And so depending on how many spots they've moved, hexes they've moved, will change the number. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, but there's a little stat block for it. And that'll be that modifier. So you got GAT, and then O and R. O is other modifiers that you might have. So let's say I'm shooting at a target and it's in the woods. Well, it's going to be slightly harder to hit the mech in the woods because it might hit the trees. So that's +1, for example. And then there is the range modifier, and this is particular to your weapon. So you just figure out, okay, I want to shoot this laser cannon, and it's actually short range because it's less than 6 hexes away, for example, and so it's going to be a +0 for that one. And then so I'd take up the gunnery, the gator, I'd add that together, and let's say that turns out to be 6. I will roll 2 dice. And if it's a 6 or higher, it hits. Great, it hits. 5 or lower, sorry, didn't make it. Because it's a skill test of how high you need to get. And then what you do is you do this cool thing. So damage is really easy, unlike Warhammer 40K, for example, which then you're rolling for damage and then you're rolling for saves. You don't have any of that. All you've got is a set damage for the type of weapon. The Battletech essentially took that ability away and said, no, there's just kind of this one damage that you do for this kind of weapon. This is how it is. A medium laser does this, a small laser does this, a PPC does this, a missile will do this, etc. So you don't have to worry about the damage. But depending on how you're facing the mech, you will roll a 2d6 again. Usually everything's 2d6. And whatever number that is, let's say I'm facing the front of the mech and I roll a 7. Well, I'm going to look, okay, if I'm facing the front of the mech and I roll a 7, okay, go to here, center of the facing the mech, boom, I'm hitting, let's say, example, the left arm. Or, oh, I rolled boxcars, or 2 6s. Oh, that's always going to hit the head. And that's where it hits. That's just where they apply the damage. And then this is actually my sheet from the game we were playing earlier. And each of these connected sections, like when it hit that leg, there's 5 damage there. So I went 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. Because you just kind of fill in the little dots. And then when a section's completely off, it's kind of nice to do this because she essentially blew off all my armor on this left arm. And then we were working on the internal damage on my arm. Every time internal damage is occurring, then you actually roll to see if critical damage occurred, and look at all of these critical things that can go wrong. Your shoulder could deactivate, your cannon might deactivate, so your different weapons, the engine might be disabled, the gyros might be disabled, so you're kind of wobbly, and they'll have different effects for you. And it's really, really cool. And that's really it, with the exception of one more thing, and that is heat. So engines, by the way, are making energy, which is hot. And so therefore, depending on how much you're running your engine, depending on the weapons you're using, or the strength of some of your stuff. So if you've got like a engine that's not really working right, well, maybe you're going to generate a little bit more heat. And you're trying to manage how hot your mech gets, because also, guess what? Machines don't work well when they're really hot. It's just how that works. And so what you're trying to do is figure out, because each of these mechs has a heat sink stat of how much every turn the heat's going to go down. So it's got coolant, it has coolant, that's the heat sink. So you have this little resource management thing, and if you let your heat stay too high, so carrying over from round to round, like for example, if you take 5 heat into the next round, you have 1 less movement point, regardless of how fast you move. If you carry over 8, you have 1 less movement point and plus another modifier to your hitting. If you carry over 10, you have -2 movement points, -3 movement points, and plus 1 modifier. And if somehow you carry over 30 heat to the next round, your engine shuts down. It is too hot, it overheated. So it's this little, it's really easy to manage heat though. Like, I know it just sounded like a lot. It's really easy to manage it. It's probably one of the easiest things because it's like, oh, I know how much this is going to go down. I know what this giant weapon, this cannon I've had. So I had a cannon called a PPC. I have no idea what that stands for because I just played it. I didn't even look at what all the acronyms mean for that kind of thing. It's just that's what the weapon's called. That's what it's called. That weapon was a giant cannon that had a particle emission, and it generated 10 heat. I just told you if you carry over 30, your thing's going to shut down. But my heat sink, my coolant, was 20. So I fired that off. It did a ton of damage. It did 10 damage. One of these freaking things hit the... So I was running away with this mech. This one I showed. This is what I was playing with earlier. And I was running away, and because there's no arms, you can actually, it has an ability for called the upper arm actuator, where these will flip around and you can shoot from the back instead. And so I was running to get some distance because I'm just more of a sniper character, and those fired off the back of me into the opponent. I thought it was like jets kind of, but again, it was a particle cannon, and I rolled double 6s, and so all of that funneled into my opponent's like head on their mech. And if your mech's armor on the head, internal and external, goes away, game over. You have beat them because you've killed their pilot. I did 10 damage to her mech in like one shot, and it was this glorious moment of being able to do this. It was so incredibly cool. So where's all this stuff coming from? Now, I said I've got the game of Armored Combat. What you've been seeing is the contents from that we were playing with this morning, and it was just an epic experience. Now, I did personally go out and buy this, an expansion pack, and if you want to see the what the unboxing of each of these look like and all the contents of the game, all the things you get when you buy this or this as an add-on, make sure to check out the unboxings that I did for those. So make sure to just scroll in the channel and you'll find those real simple to find. But let's jump into why I bought this box. So first of all, if you can't tell, I had a freaking blast playing this morning. Literally blast as I'm blowing off my opponent. Now, yes, I did win, but I had fun. The reason I bought it, not just this one, but bought Battletech, is because I've been wanting to get back into painting. I do have Warhammer 40K and Age of Sigmar stuff, so like this is a model I've painted. And if you look at it, it's kind of got the same kind of arms as the mech I played as this morning. So I do enjoy painting and building models. These come already assembled, and I am just looking forward to priming them up. That's what I'm doing when I finish this video, actually. And I'm going to paint these up, because that in itself seemed really fun to do. And you got 8 minis in this box for 59 bucks. Now, that being said, this mini alone, granted it was a long time to build it and all that kinds of stuff, and Warhammer 40K is a little bit more intensive, but this one mini was 150. So cost-wise, yeah, it's smaller, but I have 8 of these, and they're all different, and they're freaking cool, versus getting one of these and some serious overhead, and like, how do you build these things if you've never done it? Now, obviously, this is more of a show piece too, but I like this. This is going to be just super fun to do. So that's part of why I bought the game, is I can't wait to just go out and paint these later. That's going to be fun. But why did I buy this one? Why did I buy this one when we also know there is the beginner box? So I'm hovering on my hand right now, so there's the beginner box, and there's also the clan invasion box. Now, you would think you're going to start with the beginner box, right? So that has, by the way, it's $24.99 versus $59.99. That has 2 mechs, so it's about half the price, a little less than half the price, but it's only got 2 versus this one has 8. That has a smaller rule book. It doesn't have all of the rules of the game in it. It's a condensed rule book. It's got a 24-page novella, which this one came with like a small novel too. It does not include, if you watch the other video, the stock cardboard reference card that I think is like critical to the game. It does come with some maps, and it does come with also standees like this one does for the different mechs that it comes with, and some extra little terrain pieces you can put on your terrain. To me though, the cost breakdown just doesn't make sense for that. Like, yes, it's a beginner box. I understand, let's just get people playing, and if that's where you're at and that's where you can afford, and this sounds interesting to you, go for it. But I will say something fascinating about this game that I learned really quickly is this. This is my character sheet from my game earlier. You see how I have this mech here, and it's got these missiles? It's even firing the missiles. First of all, these sheets are downloadable on the Catalyst website. So you can go and you can get these, so that way you're not using up the 1 copy of them you have in the box. But you see how it has missiles? Well, if you look really closely, none of this stuff says missile. None of it at all. And so it's not a WYSIWYG or what you see is what you get game. Like, yeah, that'd be cool and you can do that, but this is the model for that sheet, and it doesn't have missiles. It actually has lasers that are more like cannons coming off the sides if you actually look at the pictures from like other things in the lore, because the person I was playing with showed me that. So the fact that the mech, it's super cool, but it's not necessarily what you need to represent it. You really just need a hex or something that fits in that circle. Then it doesn't really matter whether you had a cardboard standee or the actual mech. So all you need is the sheet. So I would personally, I'd rather have the mechs, don't get me wrong, but when I already know this one's wrong, and this is just how it is, the fact that I can proxy the ones I have for anything is kind of cool because we can just play with the rule of cool. Like, we're not playing in an official tournament, we're playing at home, we're playing maybe at a convention, but again, not for a tournament, and we can just have fun together. We just want to have a mech to represent it. So I would personally rather have the 8 different mechs for the cost running around the table, or the ability to run them around the table, even if they don't 100% match. Now, obviously I bought an expansion pack so I can have even more different mechs to run around because I'd rather have more small ones and more big ones. And they're just cool. Like, I look forward to painting these. So the beginner box for me just didn't make sense. This is what I would say is the true beginner box. Additionally, this box is $59.99. I looked yesterday at my local game store, and Warcry, which is by Games Workshop, Warcry is a skirmish game. It's more fantasy based. The new Warcry box came out a couple months ago. It's got 2 little skirmish teams. It's got terrain. It's got a battle board. It's got the big rule book, all that. It costs $230 to get into it. This was $59.99. And I have everything I need to play 1v1 and 4-player, or if I want to have multiple mechs on each person's team. I'm golden. So personally, I'm going to say, this should be the intro box. This is what I'd highly recommend for the intro box, if you're looking at this. Second, that cost is just ridiculously amazing when you're thinking about what you're getting if you're wanting to get into tabletop miniatures games, and you're wanting to have if you like mechs and sci-fi, and you want to just run around the board and just blow each other up, this is going to be a good time. This is going to be what you're looking for. And honestly, I from the bottom of my heart believe that this is one of the most cost-effective ways into tabletop miniatures. It's already got the mini. You don't have to build it. You don't technically have to paint it. I'm just wanting to do that. That's something I can do. But if you even want to use the standees, you can do that. So if actually you essentially have 2 of each one from the box, because you have the mini one and the other one. So if you want to run an army that is not an army, but a lance that has 2 of them, you do that. So this is just, it made sense. There's one more box though I have to talk about and that you need to know about, and that is the Clan Invasion box. All of the units in this and the expansion pack I got are from what's called the inner sphere. Essentially, think of that like as a collection of planets towards the inside of the galaxy. Those ones are a little bit easier to work with. In talking with my friend that I was playing with, they're easier to work with. And then there's essentially, think of the Outer Rim and Star Wars and things like that. Out there, there's stuff and modifications that happened to different mechs and different clans that started coming up with their own tactics and different powers that weren't part of the regulated inner core. Those clans introduce different mechanics because it can have different types of powers. So the Clan Invasion box comes with 5 mechs, 2 elementals, which are like smaller units and like multiple on one. It does come with one of those stock reference sheets, got some lore book, more rule book, those kind of things. So if you are like, this is good, this Battletech Armored Combat, I want more advanced. I want more rules. I want to do some cool tricks and flips with my mechs as we're going out there and beating each other up. Then you're going to want to be looking at that, the Clan Invasion. Personally, this is good for me. This is where I'm at. Maybe when I get further down, I'll maybe start dabbling in that if I'm getting Battletech to the table more often, or if I do start playing in different competitive things, because the clan ones are like super powerful, some of them. And so that is why I did not go with the Clan Invasion box either. And so that's why for buying another set, I did pick up the Inner Sphere Fire Lance. So it's 4 more mechs. I bought them because they're cool. I bought them because they're in the same vein of skill set and the same vein of powers, and it's just going around and romping around the board and using our mechs to beat each other up, because that's what I'm looking for, because it was so much fun. It was a lot of fun, and I'm very thankful to my friend for teaching me how to play, and I'm looking forward to getting 4 people together, including myself, to come and play another game. So yeah, y'all, it was good. It was really, really nice to play this. I hope that this has been helpful for you and your gaming group in determining whether or not this might be something of interest. If you're looking for more rules and things like that, I'd recommend looking online. But again, because this was just impressions and overview. But make sure to hit subscribe if you like my kind of analysis on different games and sharing these experiences. Make sure to check out the podcast. But most importantly, until next time, go make your positive impact on the world. Bye.